Morning, everyone. How are you? It's always great to be here because, well, I represent this part of Norwalk. So where we are is I'm your state legislator, and it's been a real privilege for me to do so. You know, what I'd like to do is, first of all, I would like to say that there was a discussion here earlier about cuts to the education part of the budget, and as you can imagine, the budget is about 900 pages long. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of line items, and it's $20 billion. And I have to say that it's pretty, I would be shocked if anybody agreed with 100% of that. I don't think I do. So that's a normal thing where a budget comes out and people are going to make legitimate critiques and criticisms, say, hey, I think we should do this instead of that, or we should do more here or less there. And you know what? We get that. And so what we're doing is, as part of the process, as part of the negotiations with the governor, is we've come out with our budget that's bipartisan, and we're now here listening to what people think about it. And we get that some people say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't cut the Yukon part of the budget so much. And I think that should be part of the conversation when we sit down with the governor and say, hey, look, this is what we've been hearing, and let's take a second look at that. And there's other areas as well that we've been receiving comments. Just to step back for a minute, I think many of you are aware that we in Connecticut are in an economic and fiscal crisis. That's the big picture. People are leaving our state. And, in terms of, I don't like pointing blame, but you know what, you can point it at everyone. Both parties, both sides, there's no one that has a monopoly on that. But here we are. All we can do is look forward. We can't look back. And the fact is that we have a budget that the revenues grow at 0% a year, and our expenses grow at 5% a year. And that's the definition of a fiscal crisis, and we have to balance our budget. We're not like the federal government where we can print money or borrow and paper over things. We actually have to balance it. We either have to cut spending or raise taxes. These are the only options. So, and the fact of the matter is that the majority party this year has failed to do their job, which is to pass a budget. And they had, I think, to my estimation, at least 6 opportunities since April to do so, and they failed. So we stepped up. We, the Republicans, are the minority party. And, as a minority party, it's always easy to say, we're just going to say no. We're going to oppose everything. And then we'll just critique and just go home. But you know what we did? We said, you know what, that's not good enough. Our state's in a crisis. We have a responsibility to step up. And whether you like it or not, we stepped up. And we have a budget. And our budget does not raise sales taxes, does not raise income taxes, does not raise property taxes, doesn't raise taxes on your cell phones, like my other colleagues wanted to propose. We don't raise taxes on second homes in Connecticut, and in a bunch of other ways. So we've stayed true to that promise. The other thing that we have focused on is, quite frankly, it's on employee compensation. 40% of the state budget is related to compensation to state employees. That's wages, that's health care, that's pensions, and that's post-retirement health care. A lot of those folks are getting paid a lot more than what they would get in the private sector. And what we've said is, you know what, we need to realign things to the private sector level. People don't get free health care or pensions anymore. We're now on 401ks. We're now as part of HSA medical plans. And we need to move towards that. And our budget moves towards that. And we're committed to making sure that every state employee earns at least as much as what they earn on the private sector. As my colleagues pointed out, because of the CBAC union deal, which locked in 40% of our cost structure, we now have fewer options in which to deal with our budget crisis, our $5 billion deficit, and billions of dollars of deficits going forward. We have fewer pieces to work with. And one of the things that we've tried to do is protect the part of the budget that funds human and social services, because that's gotten whacked the last 2 years. Care for kids, people with mental disabilities, people who have Alzheimer's, autism, things like that, medical expenses. We've really tried to protect that, and we're going to continue to do so. So I'll wrap up by saying this. Look, we're in the middle of a crisis. It's going to take several years for us to get out of it. And, so really what we're left with are bad choices. There's no good choice out there. Like, gee, if we just do this and everybody agrees with it, we solve the problem. Unfortunately, we're not at that point. So we now have to make choices that are maybe less bad than maybe some other choices. And that's what we've tried to do. And we get that not everyone's going to like it. Nobody likes everything anyway. But what we are willing to do is, first of all, get the job done. We passed the budget. We got it done. And we did get Democratic support. And we want to work with both sides of the aisle. We want to work with the governor. We want to meet with the governor. You know, if he says, look, I got 10 things about your budget that I don't like, and that's, well, okay, well, then maybe you give on 5 and maybe we give on 5. And then we get it done. So that's our approach. We're willing to listen. We get that not everyone's going to like everything, and we want to take that in and see what we can do to just get the job done for Connecticut, and then we can build on this and start moving our state forward. So thank you very much for listening.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Carol?
Negotiations begun yet?
Why?
They have. Negotiations.
Go ahead.
Republican leadership met with the governor on Friday, and there is a meeting today, as we understand it, among leaders of both parties and the governor.
Yes.
We can't hear you very well.
Oh, I'm one of those state workers,
Yes.
and we don't make more than people in the private sector. Many of us choose to be here even knowing that we would make more in the private sector. We also pay for our health insurance and pay for our pensions. It disturbs me that for so long people have positioned the state workers as getting bloated salaries and all kinds of extra benefits. That may have been true 40 years ago, but it's certainly not true now. And many of us haven't had raises in 4 or 5 years. So we're all trying to do our part too.
Well, and thank you for saying that. And you know, it's I don't doubt what you're saying about your position. I really don't. And sometimes, you know, in life you have sort of like competing universes. You know, someone will say, this has been my experience, and I totally believe that. And then, you know, there'll be other experiences that maybe are different, and they may be true too, and we have to try to reconcile that. I guess all I can say is that, speaking, you know, globally, because I'm afraid I don't know your personal situation, is that studies have shown that state employee wages are about comparable to what they would get in the private sector. So I would agree with you there. As far as benefits, the fact is that most people in the private sector are now on health savings account, high deductible plans, as are the Norwalk teachers, you know, until recently. And many state workers are not. That's just a fact. The other fact is that most people, when they retire, do not get health care when they're retired from their employer anymore. And the state does provide that. And that also people don't get the, you know, pensions. Most people are now on 401ks. And that's not the case in the state situation. There's still, you know, old style defined contribution plans. So again, you know, my thought on that, and we did this here in Norwalk when I served as the BT chair in Norwalk with Mayor Moshe, is that I don't think it's fair for current employees to change the rules on them while they're still here. I really don't. And so what we did in Norwalk going forward was, look, after this date in the future, if you're hired by the city, you are on 401ks, you're on HSA medical, you don't get any more post-retirement health care. For those who are still here, if you want to switch to that, that's great. We don't expect you to, but if you do, you can keep your plans. But we have to kick in some more. And so I understand that it needs to be fair to everyone, you know, that it's a transition, and, you know, and I just want you to know that I certainly respect that.